Once again, I forgot to unmute myself. There we go. Hello, welcome to this Cook Along Live. It is Friday, May 8th, and I'm going to give my entire spiel again. You know what that means, right? May 8th? May 8th is my dad's birthday. My dad's birthday. He's, I think, 27. I did the math in my head. I did some calculus, so I might be having some rounding errors, but I believe he's 27 years old today. So, happy birthday, Dad. Happy birthday. And I'm sure everybody else is happy that it's your birthday as well. Today we're doing I'm going to be doing a pan-seared salmon. Yet you can also put the salmon in the oven with everything else. So if you just want to be like one pan deal, you can totally do that. I'm going to be adding a little bit of color to the skin and getting it a little bit crispy, and then also getting a little bit of color on it. I think it tastes better. You don't have to do it that way. You can totally put it on the pan, toss it in the oven with everything else that we do. Going along with the salmon, we're going to have some asparagus. We're going to have some roasted potatoes. It's going to be really, really tasty. So, Darlene is here with us. Felicia, hello. Cobra is here with us as well. Yes, sorry about the audio. There is a mute button on my streaming software that I always forget to hit because it's the last thing I think of when I hit the button over here. And I think I'm going to try and make this thing automatically unmute myself, but we'll see. I'm tech savvy, but maybe not that tech savvy. So I said, get your oven going. You want it up to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't do metric, so I can't give you a metric conversion. I was too lazy to Google it before this, so I'm going to leave that up to you. If you use metric, go ahead and Google what 200 degrees, what 400 degrees Fahrenheit is in Celsius, and get your oven set to that. I think it might be close to 180. I'm guessing. I'm totally guessing here. This is a large chunk of salmon. And I've been gaining weight since this whole pandemic thing started, so it's perfect for me. Anyway, so let's get started. You got your oven going at 400 degrees Fahrenheit. The next thing we're going to do is we're actually going to get started with our potatoes. It's going to be super simple tonight. Hopefully you washed your potatoes. If you have not washed your potatoes yet, give them a quick rinse. And what we're going to do is we're just going to cut these guys in half. And you're going to put them straight onto your sheet pan. And you're going to get a good little row of potatoes going. Tonight the chat is actually working, which is great. It was terrible last week when I could not keep up with that since everything was not working right, but we managed. If you find any bad bits, like what I just did, just go ahead and cut them off. They're not important. (204.4 Celsius. Thank you, Michael. Lifesaver in more ways than one. You basically want to get your potatoes just kind of on one side of the pan. You don't want to put them all in a row because what we're going to be doing is adding the asparagus to the pan as well. And the way you want to cut your potatoes is, if you have a potato that's got like a flat edge and also like it's flatter one way than the other, cut it the flatter way. So we're going to be going this way. What that'll do is it'll give you two halves that are both kind of thin, so they'll actually cook a little bit quicker. And if everything is cut thinly like that, it'll all cook at about the same rate. If your potatoes, if you had to rinse them because you got caught off guard and didn't know that you had to rinse them before the live stream, don't worry, they can go on this wet, that's fine. We talked about putting a sear on something where when you have it wet and you try and sear it, it's not going to actually, it's not going to get a sear because you're creating a barrier of steam between the thing that you're cooking and the pan. When you're roasting stuff, that's not super important. You also don't need this grate that I've got. I've got like a cookie sheet in my pan. You don't need that. I like using it just because it's nice and easy. Another thing I like to do, let me go ahead and switch here. You'll notice that I've lined my entire sheet pan with aluminum foil. This makes cleanup super easy. When all the junk, goes through the grate and sticks to the pan, I can literally just pull off this and I'm done. You don't have to worry about it. So I'm using Yukon Gold potatoes, and I've got some fingerling potatoes. I got 2 bags of potatoes. I had the Yukon Golds already from the mashed potatoes that we did last week. And I went and got a small bag of just some other interesting red potatoes. It had one purple potato in it that I actually cooked for the preview picture that I took. So sorry about that. I don't have anything that interesting this week. But we're just going to kind of get these guys lined up on the sheet, like so. If you have a big sheet or a small sheet, it doesn't matter too much as long as they all fit. So we've got our oven cooking over there. We're going to actually, if you haven't already, we're going to melt our butter. So go ahead and take this, toss it in the microwave. It's the easiest way to get this melted. And we're going to just put it in for about 45 seconds. Get that going. And while we're waiting on that, we're just going to move forward. I like to kind of trim my salmon. So I've got this gigantic piece of salmon here. You'll notice that it is actually super thick in the middle, and then it gets really, really thin over here on this side. I'm actually going to just kind of cut right here and trim that piece off. About like that. And you can toss this, you can use it in fish stock, whatever you want to do. I'm just going to set it aside right now. But now you've got like a restaurant-looking piece of salmon. And if you kind of feel right up along the middle here, you're going to feel some of the bones if it has any. If this is the middle of the salmon, and you feel just a little bit up, you might even see some poking out. What you should try and do is see if you can kind of peel them out with your fingers. If not, don't worry too much about it. You can always peel them out later. But if you go kind of against the skin, or against the flesh, you'll feel the bones and you should be able to kind of pop them out. Again, if you can't, don't worry about it. Just know that they're there, and they're always in a single line. So you can always pull these guys out later after you've cooked the salmon. But if you can pull them out right now, go ahead and do it. It just makes things a little bit easier. How has everybody's week been? Has everybody had a nice, productive week? You guys learned some really cool stuff this week? Got any plans for the weekend? What's going on with y'all? I've been getting kind of acclimated in my new role at work, which has been a lot of fun. And I've heard that my butter was done, so I'm going to go ahead and grab that. Okay. So we've got our little thing of butter here. I'll go ahead and use my towel here, wipe my hands off a little. Got some salmon on it. What we're going to do is we're going to take this, we're going to grate. I'm just going to take a couple of cloves. I know I have measurements. I don't like using measurements. I'm lazy. I want this to be a little bit more garlicky, so I'm just going to kind of grate up 3 cloves of garlic. And if you just kind of give them a tap with your knife, the skin comes right off. Get the butter out of the way. Put the garlic on the cutting board. You don't have to hit it very hard, just a light tap. The skin will kind of peel off, and then you should be able to just kind of remove it really quickly. Got 3 cloves. I can use a garlic press if I want to put it in here. I'm not going to do that. I am actually going to grab my trusty microplane. If you have a garlic press, you can use that as well. This is just super easy. Hold the microplane right over the butter and just go shoop, 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 shoop. And you'll just get the butter, or you'll get the garlic right into the butter. Yeah, Georgia's kind of doing some bad stuff. I'm not super happy with your governor. I know I used to live out there, but I don't believe he was the governor when I was there. Not super cool. And they're making it so that if you guys choose not to go back into work, they can consider you, like, you have the ability to go back, so you can't collect unemployment anymore, which I think is really, really trashy. No bueno. Ooh, pumpkin bread. Awesome, awesome. So with a microplane grater, once you've kind of grated everything, always check the back, because you're always going to have some stuff on the back. You can just use your finger on the back and just kind of scoop that in. And of course I shoved it into the corners, which is always fun. I'm going to use the back of my knife. Just kind of get that into the butter. A little bit more over here. There we are. Done with that. Sticky garlic fingers is always fun. Yeah, he seems like kind of a uninformed moron, much like certain people who are in charge. Anyway, we're good with that. I'm using unsalted butter. If you're using salted butter, don't worry about putting salt in here. Since I'm using unsalted butter, I'm controlling the amount of salt that I'm using. And what I'm actually going to do is not put it into the butter. I'm going to be tossing these guys with the butter. So, ooh, wow, that was loud. I'm just going to throw these into a little bowl. Like so. Gonna make sure the butter is mixed with the garlic. I'm gonna pour a little bit of garlic butter into the bowl, making sure to get some of the garlic out of there too. There we go. And I'm just gonna use my buttery hand, and I'm just gonna toss these together and just make sure that they're all coated with butter. This is the fun part of cooking, where you get all dirty. Now, I am not going to clean this bowl out because I'm also going to toss my asparagus in here later, but we don't need to do that yet. We're just going to get our potatoes coated. Got some really nice coated potatoes. Hey, Hannah, how's it going? I do use kosher salt, Felicia, yes. And there are some reasons that I can go into. I'm going to re-put these out here. Now, these are totally coated in butter. I like to use kosher salt because, generally speaking, all of the granules are the same size. It's a mild salt flavor, and you can see all of the granules that come out, so you know how much you're salting whatever you're salting. They are irregular in shape, so they tend to stick a little bit better than iodized salt, and they still have trace minerals in them from when they were harvested or dried out or whatever. So kosher salt is the preferred way of salting things. Iodized salt, it's really, really hard to control how salty you get something because the granules are so small, it's really easy to oversalt things. So we got this out on the tray. I'm gonna just dry my hand off real quick because buttery fingers are good at some points, but not always. And when you're working with salt, they are not that great. And I've got a recipe up over here on my iPad, but I'm just kind of following it, meh, sorta. I don't really like the way that they're doing some things, so I'm not doing them that way. So we got that going. What we're gonna do is we're going to grab our salt. I've got dry fingers now because I wiped them off with my towel. And I'm just going to salt the top of my potatoes. You're going to get a much more controlled amount of salt on your potatoes this way than if you tried to use salted butter or add salt to the mix. This way you can actually see how much salt you have on your potatoes. If you don't have kosher salt, if all you're using is iodized salt, that's fine. Just make sure that you're not, put a light dusting on. You don't want to go too heavy on that because it doesn't really, it's got too much salt flavor per granule. So you'll think you're putting a little bit on and you'll actually be putting a lot on. So we've got this salted on one side. We're going to put a little layer of pepper down here as well. And you can definitely see the pepper. I would say maybe half of the butter you melted, Darlene. It doesn't have to be a lot, but we melted about a quarter cup, I guess, is what the recipe said. So about half that should be good. And then as long as you can mix it up and get it covering all the potatoes, you're good. Don't rinse out the bowl that you put the butter in though, because we're going to use that again for the asparagus. So just leave whatever's left in the pan in the pan. Awesome. So our potatoes are nice and kind of ready to go. We're going to throw them in the oven real quick. If you're running a little bit behind, it's not a problem. When you put them in the oven, take a look at the clock. You want them in there for about 15-ish minutes. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to get the asparagus ready, and then I'm going to take care of the salmon. The asparagus is going to go in the oven with the potatoes, and the salmon I'm going to be doing in the pan. So I want these done first so I can throw them in there in 15 minutes. Then I can take care of the salmon at my leisure. If it's a half a cup, then just put in like a quarter cup into the bowl. As you can tell, I'm not following the recipe too closely. I just know that I need butter, and I know that I need salt and pepper, and so that's kind of what I'm doing. So for the asparagus, these guys are actually really easy. I'm going to bring my bowl back over, the one that I was using for the potatoes. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to just take my asparagus, take like 3 at a time. And all I want to do is cut off like the bottom 2 inches. There's an area, like if you feel kind of down, there's an area where it gets kind of woody. If you kind of bend it, you'll feel it. Like one part of the asparagus is not going to bend. It's going to be just about an inch from the bottom usually. Inch to an inch and a half from the bottom. And that's what you want to cut off because it's just not palatable and it doesn't really cook very well. I'm just going to set that aside. I'm just going to take my asparagus spears and toss them into this buttery bowl. Yeah, Felicia, you can use olive oil. Olive oil and butter are both fat, so it doesn't really matter which one you use. The butter just adds that nutty flavor that butter gives things. If you're roasting something in the oven, butter is generally going to work a little bit better than if, say, you're trying to do it in a pan, just because butter will actually burn at a lower temperature than oil. We call that the smoke point. It's the point at which whatever fat you're using, whatever oil you're using, is burning instead of just getting hot and good to sear in. So I've got 4 here. I'm just going to cut off the bottom like 1.5 inches. And if you cut through and it's like super hard to cut through, move up about 1/2 inch until it's super easy to cut through. Oops, I don't want these in here. What's going on? Over here. All right. Make sure you don't throw your stalks into your buttery bowl. I just did that. Same thing, another 4. And I can take my time. I've got 15 minutes on that, on those potatoes over there. I'm just gonna come up about 1.5 inches. There we go. Put the stalks over here. And I can actually make a vegetable stock with the asparagus cuttings if I wanted to. I've also got that little bit of salmon, so I could actually make a fish stock with that as well. Depends on how crazy you want to go. If you have a compost bin, you can throw all of that in the compost pile, or just toss it. Last bit of asparagus here. Bottom 1.5 inches. I'll toss that into the bowl. And I'm going to go ahead and just kind of mix it up. Now I've got a bunch of butter on the sides. So you can see the butter is all over the sides of the bowl here, right? With the asparagus, I'm actually going to salt the asparagus in the bowl here. And I don't need too much salt. But what's going to happen now, as I kind of coat it and mix it around in the bowl, the butter is going to get on the outside of the asparagus, and it's going to be picking up the salt as well. And if you need to add a little bit more butter into here, feel free. So I'm going to add just a little bit more butter. And I'm just going to kind of toss everything together. You basically just want the outside to kind of glisten. So see how this one's kind of glistening? That's what you want. And you're going to notice that on the glistening ones, you're going to have salt sticking to the outside. And that's exactly what you want. Asparagus on its own won't hold salt. But once you add any kind of fat, whether it's butter or olive oil or whatever, the salt will stick to it. There we go. I'm just literally going to set that aside right now. I'm waiting for 15 minutes so that I can put it in with my potatoes. The potatoes are smelling super garlicky and yummy right now for me. So I am just enjoying the smell. Now, if you wanted to with the potatoes, you could throw some thyme in there if you have some fresh thyme. It'll also flavor the potatoes, make them really tasty and fragrant. You don't have to. Totally up to you. Now that we're done with all of this, we're going to start working on our salmon. So I've got my awesome piece of salmon here. Beautiful. I'm going to flip it upside down. And what I'm going to do is cut through the skin. I'm not going to go very deep through the skin. I just want to kind of score through it, and I'll show you why in a second. But let's go ahead and get our knife. And we're just going to very gently cut. And you basically just want to open it up like that. So you get just a little bit of a slit. You want it to go most of the way down, but you don't want to go deep. You just want to cut in maybe, I don't know, a quarter of an inch into the salmon. Yeah, Felicia, you could definitely use rosemary instead of thyme. Those are also amazingly delicious. And we're going to put 3 cuts in the back of this salmon. If you have a smaller piece, don't put as many, maybe just do 2. If you have a longer piece that's not as thick as this one, because this is a actually pretty thick piece of salmon, you know, the longer the piece, you basically want to space them every ½ inch. I'm going to be able to put 3 in this guy. And then while we've got his back to us, we're going to talk about him behind his back. See what I did there? All right, I won't give up my day job. What we're going to do is we're actually going to spread this guy open like this, and we're going to be able to season the inside with salt and pepper. So we're going to grab our salt. We're just going to hold the first little cut open, add a little bit of salt in there. Second one, a little bit of salt in there. Third one, a little bit of salt in there. All good. And we're going to flip our salmon over. We're going to salt the top. Again, if you're using kosher salt, just make sure you get a nice even dusting of salt. If you're using iodized salt, still get an even dusting, but maybe not as much. And then we're going to also salt the sides. So what we're doing with this salmon is we're basically almost kind of curing it from the outside with the salt. And that looks good. And I'm also going to throw some pepper in here. I'm only going to put pepper on the flesh side. I'm not going to put it on both sides. What's going to end up happening is when we cook this, I'm going to be cooking it in the pan. And when I cook it in the pan, I'm going to be leaving it on the skin side for quite a while. I don't want to burn the pepper while I'm cooking it on the skin side. So I'm just going to kind of press it into the flesh. After we've seared the skin, we'll flip it over. It'll have a little bit of time on this, on the flesh side to kind of give it a little bit of color, but it's not going to be long enough to get the pepper burned. So should work out. You can put it on the sides as well if you want. I'm lazy, I'm not going to. So let's see, how much time? 6:24. All right, cool. We got about 5 minutes, and we can just kind of sit here, enjoy the afternoon. Happy Friday again, everybody. You're only growing rosemary? That's awesome. I've got rosemary, thyme, chives. I've got a garden. It's nice. Got potatoes, peppers, all kinds of stuff out there. How's everybody doing? I know at least one of you is cooking along with me. So how are you doing? Are you caught up? Are you running behind? Or is everything looking similar to what we're doing? Is it as easy as you thought it was, or is it more difficult than you thought it was? I'm interested in knowing this. I know Felicia's on the East Coast. I know Michael is on the East Coast as well. I am still baking bread, yes. I've actually got some sourdough starter in here that I've got to feed. And he's looking pretty good. But he started down here, and he's actually gone up to here, and then he's come back down. So I got to feed him and get him ready. I'm trying to, you know, watch my girlish figure. So I'm not making bread as often as I have been. But it is still going, and I'm still really working on the sourdough. Temperature for the potatoes was 400 degrees, Mom. Yeah, Darlene, no worries. We got 5 minutes, so you're all good. You can catch up. Not in any hurry. That's another thing with cooking. Like, the speed comes, the more confident you get. I've been cooking for a long time, and I love kind of experimenting and playing around. So for me, I can just jump between things and do things really quick. If you're just getting into it, when I first started, it would take me 3 or 4 hours to do something super simple. And so it's definitely a learned muscle. You just kind of got to get into it and kind of play around, have fun with it. Don't worry too much about the measurements. Things will just taste a little bit different. But with cooking, it's all good. Don't worry about it. It's good. Another thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of my lemons and I'm going to start juicing it. Or I'm going to get it ready to juice. I'm going to show you a real quick trick here. Let me go ahead and move the salmon a little bit out of the way. I think I've shown this before on a previous stream, but I've got some new viewers today. So what I'm going to do is show it again. It's really easy. Take your lemon. All of the seeds are right down the middle of the lemon. So what we're going to do is, instead of cutting it in half, which is going to basically be right in the middle of all of the seeds, we're going to switch it, and we're just going to cut about 1/3 of the way down. So you see what I'm doing here? The middle is right about here. So I'm cutting about 1/3 of the way down. I'm going to flip the lemon the other way, cut about 1/3 of the way down again. Now, if I show this to you, you can see that there's a bunch of seeds in there, and there's a bunch of seeds on that side as well. If I show you the edges, this does have a small little seed here, and it's just because I cut through it. I can just kind of pop that out. Okay, seed's gone. Same with this one. I've got like maybe 1 seed and 1/2 a seed that I cut through again. So that's super easy to get rid of too. I can just kind of brush it out. Now I've got 2 halves of a lemon that have no seeds in them, so I can just kind of go whoop, whatever. And we're going to get these over our asparagus. I don't have to worry about seeds because I got no seeds. It's 2 halves of a lemon. All the seeds are in this middle part. I don't have to worry about it. And if I want to use the rest of this lemon, I can actually see where the seeds are. So I can actually look at this and say, all right, cool. Well, I've got seeds here, so what I'm going to do is just cut right there, which I have no seeds in that part. Oh, I got a couple. That's all right, because they're super easy to pop out. They're right on the top. Seeds out. That's got no seeds. I'm going to do the same thing with this one. Seeds end about there. And I got no seeds. Cool. I can even pop the seeds out of this if I wanted to. And all I have to do is kind of scrape down. Oh, you guys can't see that. Let's do that. All I have to do is kind of scrape down the center part here, and all the seeds just kind of pop out. So now I got the center part too. No seeds. I don't have to worry about it. And these are seed-free, which is nice. I'm just going to put them over there because I'm going to use them on the salmon later. Cindy, I could probably do pita bread. The problem is, the reason that I'm not doing breads, and the reason that I'm not doing things like, a lot of people have asked me to do beef Wellington, because I do make a really good beef Wellington. I could be here all day doing a beef Wellington. I really don't think people want to watch an all-day stream, and the point of these streams is to have people cook along with me. Pita bread is the same thing. When you're making the dough, you have to let the dough rest and kind of rise, and it takes about 2 hours for that to happen. And it would be really, really boring if I'm like, all right, cool, dough's done. I'm going to put it over here for 2 hours. See ya, and like leave and go do something else. And I could always do the trick where I'm like, all right, here's the dough. Oh, look, I've got one already ready. But if you're cooking along with me, that doesn't make any sense. You're not going to be able to cook along with me. You'll have to pause the stream and then come back to it later. I really don't want to do that. I'm trying to stick to recipes that are maybe at most an hour long, and an hour and a half, I guess, at the very most, but that somebody can follow along with me. Even if you're running a little bit behind, at least you can kind of see, cook with me, get some confidence, and have fun doing it. The breads and stuff, I might end up doing some YouTube videos where I've actually like edited them down, maybe on a different channel. So I don't know. Maybe at some point I'll do some other cooking that's a longer form. But right now, for the live streams, I just want to keep it shortish and simple. And this really is a simple recipe tonight. We've got lemon juice in here. Don't forget to kind of mix it together, again, using your hand. And we've had our 30 minutes up. Or, I'm sorry, our 15 minutes for the potatoes are up. So what we're gonna do is we're going to, got a bunch of lemon juice on there, got a bunch of butter on there. I'm gonna add a little bit more salt, just in case the lemon juice kind of popped some of it off. And I'm going to use this awesome thing here, pot holder, open the oven. I'm gonna pull out the rack, and I'm just gonna put these guys on the unused side of the pan. And they might sizzle because the pan is hot and these are not. And I'm just gonna kind of give one row of asparagus. They don't have to be all in one row. If you have to pile them up on each other, that's okay. They might take a little longer to cook. I'm gonna go ahead and push this pan back into the oven, close it. Those guys are gonna roast while we take care of our salmon. So I've got a fish spatula. You don't need one of these. Any spatula will work. This is the only spatula that I use. I use this for pancakes. I use this for meat. I use this for everything, just because it's so long. And that's what she said, but I'm not going to get into that. Anyway, awesome tool. If you have another spatula, it's fine. Just use that one. It's good. Don't worry too much about it. We're going to get our pan over here preheated. If you have a range or a cooktop or whatever, get your gas on like medium heat. You don't want this super hot. Medium to just a little bit above medium for medium high. You don't want it on the high end of medium high, but you do want it a little bit higher than medium. We're going to give this a couple seconds, probably about a minute, to kind of heat itself up. Don't put anything into a cold pan ever. Very rarely put anything into a cold pan. You want your pan to be nice and warm. I'm using an induction cooktop over here. Gas works fine, electric heat works fine. It really doesn't matter what you're using. Just make sure that when you put your hand about an inch over, you can't hold it there for very long. You wanna know that it's hot. I'm drinking 11.7% beer tonight. I also have a dry white wine that I'm gonna be using to cook with a little bit later. And I might switch to that when I'm done with this, but we'll see. Darlene, let's see. Oh, the lemon juice went into the asparagus bowl. So when I cut the lemon open, and I showed you how to kind of do it without getting the seeds in it, I squeezed the lemons right into the asparagus bowl. If you don't use all the lemon in the asparagus bowl, maybe use half the lemon that you have if you already squeezed it. Pour the lemon juice into the asparagus, toss it real quick, add a little bit more salt, and then toss that into the oven. You don't have to reset the timer because we're just going to let that roast while we're doing the salmon. It's going to take about the same amount of time. Again, like, you can time everything and be exact with cooking. You have a lot less fun when you're doing it that way. So I can see that my pan is just starting to kind of smoke, which is about where I want it. If you're using nonstick, don't let it smoke. Just let it heat for about a minute and a half, 2 minutes. You do want to feel heat through the pan though. And I'm getting some of that heat. You guys can see that it's kind of smoking. And what I'm going to do here, I've got my salmon kind of ready to go, and I actually forgot to do my garlic. So here, I made a mistake. I'm going to take another clove of garlic, just kind of peel the skin off of it. I'm just going to use one because I've only got one salmon fillet. And I'm going to grab my microplane again. If you have a garlic press, just use that here. And we're just going to grate the garlic right onto the salmon. I'm gonna have to actually do this after I finish grating it because it's all sticking to the microplane grater, which is always fun. So I'm just gonna kind of scoop the salmon off the microplane, and I'm really just gonna kind of rub it all over. My pan is very much smoking right now, which is all good. I'm actually gonna turn it down to medium. And we're just going to kind of rub it in to the salmon. That's good enough for government work. What I'm going to do over here is I'm actually going to put in a little bit of olive oil into the pan. Make sure that it coats the bottom of the pan. And the salmon's going to go in. So I'm just going to pick up the fillet, and I'm going to lay it away from you. Always lay it away from you, because then if it splatters, it's going to splatter the opposite direction of you. Just like that. Now I've got my heat on medium. You definitely want to be hearing the sizzling. If you're not hearing the sizzling, your pan is not hot enough. Take your salmon out, set it, let this heat a little bit more. You want to hear the sizzle. You can go to Costco and get this bad boy. My mom actually gave this to me, I don't know, a while ago. Because I was doing some cooking at her house and I did something and she's like, here, take the olive oil. And I was like, okay. And now I've got olive oil for life, basically. So we've got the salmon in here. You can use your hands if you're confident like me. Also, my hands don't feel oil anymore. Or just use your spatula and just kind of spin it around a little bit. Also, use your spatula to kind of press the salmon into the pan. And just make sure that the entire back of the salmon is touching the pan. Hey Laura, good to see you. Welcome to the stream tonight. What we're also going to do with our salmon over here while it's cooking, the rest of our butter, and if you don't have any butter left over because you used it all in the asparagus and potatoes, it's fine. Just cut a pat of butter off of your butter stick. We're just going to pour this right over the top of the salmon. Doesn't have to be super even. We're just going to let that simmer and sear over here. Turn the salmon so that you can see one of the edges. And what you're going to notice is salmon actually cooks at a really low temperature. You're going to start seeing it cook up the side. The side is going to start getting more and more pale in color, as opposed to the nice salmon orange or salmon color, if you want to call it that. You're going to start seeing that the side of the salmon is going to start cooking and it's going to get more pale. We're just literally going to leave this and let it kind of cook. We've also got our pieces of lemon over here that have no seeds in them. If you still have a little bit of lemon juice left over from what you squeezed previously, we're going to be using that in a second, once we're kind of done with this. If you want to get your salmon cooking just right on your pan, go ahead and toss it in on the pan right now with the butter on top of it. If you're using this pan, or I'm sorry, the sheet pan in the oven. If you're using a pan separately like I am, this is what you want to be doing. If you put it on the sheet pan, set your timer for, let's say 8 minutes, and you should be good. This is going to get a nice color on the back of the salmon, and it's also going to get a little bit more color on the top of the salmon once we flip it, and you're going to get more flavor out of it. So I like doing it this way. We're really just not going to touch the salmon. It's just going to kind of go. I'm going to drink some more beer, because I like beer. That is a tasty beer. So my salmon, it doesn't look like you guys can see it, but it's cooked about a quarter of the way up at the moment. And that's fine. I'm just going to leave it there. I've also got a huge piece of fish. So what I might actually need to do is cook it over here for a little bit and then transfer it to the oven to cook the rest of the way. So we'll see if that happens. But I'll walk you through it if you're doing the same thing, so don't worry too much about that. So if I look at kind of this side of the salmon, you can probably see that, where it's starting to get more opaque on the edge here, and then this is still uncooked salmon. And then if you look at the edge on this side, I don't know if you can see that, but you can see kind of it's getting more opaque as well. So it's getting a little bit more pale, a little bit more opaque. You can tell that it's cooked. Resist turning the temperature of this up, because that's when you really, really burn the skin and it becomes a puck and you don't want to eat it. But you want it a little bit higher than medium. So if it's like medium, just a touch into medium high. And we can just kind of let this go. And this is the part of the live stream where I just kind of do a dance, because this is such an uninvolved dinner. I don't want to say easy, because you can screw it up, but it's not something that requires a lot of attention. You can just kind of set it and do what you're doing. If you're drinking wine or if you're drinking beer, this is when you're just kind of chilling and having a good time. If you have guests over, which I do because you're all watching, which is awesome, and thank you so much for watching. And those of you who are cooking along, this is a great recipe to learn on, because there's so much downtime that if you're running behind, you have plenty of time to catch up. So I'm just kind of checking. I'm just keeping an eye on my salmon to see what the edges are doing. And as they kind of get more and more opaque, I'm timing whether I want to flip it or not. I'm also looking right at the skin up along the edges that are touching the pan. And if they get too brown, I know that the bottom is burning, and then I can flip it. And then if I still need to cook it more, I can always toss it in the oven. I've got some parsley over here, and what I'm going to do with the parsley that's on my cutting board is I'm just going to chop it up, because I'm going to be garnishing the salmon with that when it's done cooking. I don't want to add this to the pan yet, because I don't want to burn the parsley. But what you're going to do with the parsley is just kind of bunch it up together and just kind of roll it like a cigar. It's not going to be perfect. It is going to be a bunch of parsley. But the more you roll it, the more together it kind of gets. And then you can just cut through it once. And you get a nice garnish. And if you still need to go through it, you can do it one more time. And that method is super easy if you've never seen it before. You literally just have your knife, you hold onto it on the end, put your hand on this side, the very point, hold it down with the pointed end down, and you're just rocking this side up and down. And then you just move your hand up the cutting board. It looks super impressive. It's really not. It's super easy. But as you get confident and you start like going really fast, it looks like you're doing a lot. It looks like you're such a badass chef. Look at how cool I am. Anyway, let's not be cool for a second. So I'm looking at my salmon. It is getting more and more opaque around the edges. It's looking really good. I actually think I'm going to flip it right now. I'm going to say it's about a third of the way up opaque. So I'm just going to kind of slide underneath it like this and flip it. I've got some garlic on my hand from touching it. I'm just going to kind of let it dribble onto the salmon. I've got my salmon here upside down. What I'm going to do is take one of my little slices of lemon here, and I'm just going to kind of squeeze it into these little recesses, and that'll give you a little bit of lemon flavor in the salmon. You don't have to worry about the seeds because we've already removed them. Or if you have a bowl full of lemon juice or whatever, same thing. Hopefully you don't have any seeds in your lemon juice. But you can just kind of squeeze them on the back of the salmon. And you'll notice our salmon is nice and seared, not burned. It's yummy. This is going to be awesome. You can eat the skin if you want to. I usually don't. It's not my thing. Yet you definitely can if you wanted to. And now if you kind of look at the side of the salmon, at least on this side, my salmon is opaque most of the way through. Same thing on this side. If I flip it around and kind of show you this side, the salmon is mostly opaque all the way through. And that is what you want. And again, we're not cooking this on a super high heat, which means you're not likely to burn what you're cooking. It takes a little bit longer to get to the color that you're looking for. And it takes a little bit longer to cook it all the way through, but you're not worried about burning it. If you cook this on a super high heat, you'll just sear the outside before you can actually cook the meat, and then that's where you kind of end up losing. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to flip it from the front side, which is the flesh side, and flip it back onto the skin. I have to be super gentle with this because salmon is flaky, so as soon as you start kind of playing around with that flesh, it's going to start wanting to kind of fall apart. So just very gently scoop underneath the front, and we're just going to flip it over. And that looks delicious. The other half of our lemon, or the other quarter of our lemon, we're just gonna drizzle on the top here. And this is great. We're getting a little bit of steam, which is also helping to cook the salmon. And what I'm going to do is cheat a little bit because I want a little bit more butter flavor on my salmon. So I'm going to take a little pat of butter and just set it right on top there. The heat from the pan is going to make that melt. I'm going to take this parsley that I have on my cutting board and just add it right to the top. We're not going to be flipping this back over on this side. So this side is cooked. The parsley is just kind of adding flavor right now. It's wilting a little bit because of the heat, but that's fine. We're just letting the back crisp up. The great thing about the skin is if you burn it, it's not a big deal because a lot of people don't like eating it. So you're using that as kind of a barrier to continue cooking the flesh, which is what you're actually really after. And we're gonna let this butter kind of melt. I'm gonna go and check on the potatoes and stuff real quick, and we're gonna see how those look. There we go. And, woo, that looks good. Nothing in there is burnt yet, but it is starting to brown. I'm gonna let that go for just a little bit longer. I'm gonna grab a plate and get things ready to actually get this up for serving. So those of you who are cooking with me, how does everything look? Does your salmon look good? Do your potatoes look all right? How is everything going? And if you're running a little bit behind, that's fine. Don't worry about it. Again, cooking should be fun and enjoyable and not stressful. Cutting board out of the way. And the reason I put down, so I actually got this dampened and then I put the cutting board on top of it. You can use a cloth napkin, you can use a paper towel, you can use one of those shelf liners. It keeps the cutting board from sliding around when you're cutting on it. It's a really, really cool kitchen hack for you. I'm just gonna toss that over there because I've got a table over there. And where did my spatula go? Aha, found it. I'm gonna grab my spatula and I'm going to slide it underneath the salmon here. And look at that salmon. Cooked all the way through. Nice color on that. If you take this and you put it just in the oven, there's no way you're gonna get this color on it. It's gonna get cooked. It's gonna get cooked all the way through, but you're just not going to get the nice sear on the salmon like you will if you're using a pan. The original recipe just calls for everything to go on the tray, which you could totally do. I decided to break from the recipe because I knew that that wasn't going to be my preferred method of eating the salmon. I'm going to turn off my burner because I'm done with it. I'm going to go and grab my pot holder and pull these gorgeous veggies out of the oven. Advanced method here, I'm going to slide this shelf back in with the tray. I'm just going to put this right on top of the cast iron pan. Look at those veggies. Look at how good those guys look. Nice color on everything. Not burned. Nice and cooked. Ooh, yummy, yummy, yummy. I need something to pick these things up with. Got my tongs. As usual, if you're using tongs, you have to click them together. If you don't click your tongs together, they're not actually useful. It is science, so click them. Let's see, how do I want to plate this? Got some awesome potatoes, I've got some awesome asparagus, I've got a lovely piece of fish here. I think I'm going to start with the potatoes. And I'm just going to start kind of piling them. Oop. Potato down. This is way too many potatoes for one person. But I'm going to grab a couple of different varieties. So I've got my Yukon Golds, I've got some of these red potatoes, which have some streaks of red through the center. Just going to make a little pile here of potatoes. And as we all know, if food looks good, it just makes it taste even better. So I've got a nice pile of potatoes over there. I'm going to grab some asparagus and kind of lay it on top of the potatoes. Just kind of get some vertical layering going here. And if I take my salmon and scoop underneath it, it is starting to fall apart. But if I can kind of scoop underneath it and do something like that. Grab a few more asparagus. I think asparagus would be the plural of asparaguses. Who's with me? Asparagus? Asparagus? Asparaguses? What do you guys think? Toss a potato down here and another potato down here. We'll get rid of this guy. Oh no! Hot, but good. And what I'm gonna do, clean up the plate. You definitely do not have to do this. Nobody really cares. But if you are me and you want to make it look nice for the stream, this is what you're going to do. I've also got to get a picture for the gram. You know, the gram. We're done. We got our lovely, lovely seared salmon, potatoes, and roasted asparagus. Now, if you really want to be fancy, I'm going to move these guys out of the way. I'm actually just going to cancel my oven real quick and toss them back in. We've got a bunch of cool fish flavor in here. And it's cast iron, so it is a little bit warm. Be careful. This is where the wine comes in. Add a little bit of wine to your pan. Turn it on to high heat. And what's going to happen is this is going to start boiling, and all of the fish bits that have kind of burned to the bottom of the pan are going to get released because acid will do that. And this is also a really, really cool way to clean your pan. I'm going to grab one of these guys. Spatula. Wait, there we go. Spatula. I'm just going to kind of scrape around the outside. All of the little bits of salmon should come out of your pan. And you can fling it all the way across your countertop if you want to. I'm going to turn this down to medium-low now. Now I've got a clean pan. I've got all this yummy, yummy salmon sauce. And because a chef will always do this, we're going to add another little pat of butter to this sauce. And now we're going to turn off the heat. Stir in the butter, which will make the sauce kind of glossy and luxurious. And you've just made a very, very tasty pan sauce. I mean, look at that. Look at how yummy that sauce looks. And that took an extra, what, minute? Now watch this. I am just going to let it kind of drizzle into the bottom of the pan. Scoop it up with a spoon. And let it drizzle over my salmon and my asparagus and my potatoes. You're adding flavor, you're adding complexity. You're making the dish look like you are a super badass chef. And now we're really done. This is how you serve it on Valentine's Day, on Mother's Day, whatever day it is. You're gonna be like, yep, that's right. I am a kitchen ninja. And there we go, money shot. Salmon, roasted potatoes, roasted asparagus, done. Potatoes and the asparagus cooked in the oven for about, the potatoes went in 15 minutes before the asparagus went onto the tray. And then the asparagus was on for another, let's see, it was 40, so it was 30 minutes. So 15 was 30 and then 40, so another like 10 minutes. So 15 minutes for the potatoes, 10 to 15 minutes for the asparagus, and you should be good. Awesome, Darlene. How does it look? Take a picture, post it in the comments. I would love to see what it looks like. Yes, yes. Awesome, guys. I'm gonna take a picture of this and post it on Instagram because I'm a whore, and that's what I do. Hopefully this was an awesome live stream for you. I decided to do salmon and asparagus and potatoes because Darlene actually said, hey, I wanna do something that's a little bit easier to do than something that's more complex. And also, it is a dish that my dad really likes. So it was kind of a, you know, win-win, two birds with one stone deal, where I could make something a little bit more simple, a little bit more easy to do. This live stream was what? Where are we? This live stream took probably when we got started and actually got into it, about 10 minutes behind, so about 50 minutes to get all of this done. You got a fantastic looking meal. It's good for my dad. It's good for Darlene. So we're all good, man. You all have a great weekend. It's always a pleasure to cook with you. Thank you so much for joining me again on one of these fantastic adventures. I've got the recipe. I can give you the recipe I was using, although I just kind of used it as a really loose scaffold, kind of used the ingredients but didn't really follow the directions of the recipe. And we've got a much nicer looking dish than what the picture on the recipe looks like. But yeah, if anybody cooked along with me, Darlene, Mom, take a picture, post it in the comments. Let me see what it looks like because I'm always interested to see how you all did. Anyway, have a great weekend. Happy Friday. And we will see you next week with a new Cook Along Live. Have a great weekend, everybody. Bye.